Well, while SA Hockey nears the appointment of its newest CEO, Shaune Baaitjies takes up the interim role to lead the organization in the meanwhile. This just days after the organization's longest-standing CEO, Marissa Langeni, called it quits after 12 years in office. And with a busy 2022 calendar, including both national teams having qualified for the Commonwealth Games, we get a sense of what's been cooking at the Federation. Well, to talk about the continuation of the SA Hockey legacy, Shaune Baaitjies joins me live via Zoom. A very good afternoon, Mrs. Baaitjies. My opening question, what are the critical factors that need attention at this very moment within the organization?
Good afternoon, Arthur, and thank you so much for having me. Well, you made the point that Marissa was with SA Hockey for a very long time. She ran a very organized ship, and one matter which we as SA Hockey consistently battles with is securing sponsorship partners. And for that, we are looking at ways to turn it around. The other important matter is obviously employing a full-time CEO. As you know, my role is an interim one, but it's important to understand that the process of employing the CEO is not naturally a quick process.
All right, having said that, Shaune, are you filling the interim role for the time being or as a potential candidate to be appointed full-time in the position? And how urgent is it to find a replacement for Marissa Langeni?
I think it is very urgent. You cannot have an interim CEO for months and months on end. So for SA Hockey, it is very important that we do fill this position permanently as soon as possible. For now, I want to confirm that I'm filling it in an interim capacity, but I'd like to revisit my position in the next couple of weeks.
All right, Shaune, why is sponsorship and funding still a major challenge for SA Hockey? And are there plans in place to avoid what occurred ahead of the Tokyo Olympics, where a crowdfunding initiative had been implemented to send our national teams to Japan?
Yes. On the back of COVID, which has obviously left many companies in not an ideal space, it's definitely a contributing factor to that conversation. Arthur, going the route of crowdfunding is obviously not where we ever want to be. But I'm pleased to say that there are some interventions in place as we speak to turn around that situation. It's still early days, and I really can't say too much yet, but I'm very hopeful. We are very hopeful that the situation is going to be turned around.
Well, Mrs. Baaitjies, having worked in administration for some time now, what are those strategies that you've also put in place to counter the kind of pressures that arise in organizing, controlling and leading the Federation?
Arthur, I think being in administration, sports administration for many decades, it's still different because you're dealing with it at different levels. So needless to say, I've never done a CEO post at national level. And coming from corporate, where I was for many moons, I always know that there's always room for improvement. It's early days, but the manner, like I said, the manner in which Marissa left this house was a good one. So my job is fairly easy because there were interventions in place to keep the cogs really churning. So for now, I'm grateful for the way it is, but I am looking for little initiatives to improve the current processes.
All right, women's hockey in particular has grown and been given more attention. What else can be done to get it on par with the rest of the world?
I'm not sure, Arthur, if you know that we've got a new coach. I think Marissa might have mentioned it to you in one of her talks or in the media. So Giles Bonet is an old new coach. He's very familiar with the women's setup, and he's back in the fold. And last week when I met with him at the women's camp, he really got me so enthused with his high-level plan, what his vision is of how to get our women's national team to the level he believes they can be. Yes, there's much work needed. And the short answer is to get our women playing as many internationals as possible.
Fantastic, Shaune. I mean, the Commonwealth Games are around the corner. How have the preparations been going? And realistically speaking, can we get our teams on the podiums by the time the Commonwealth Games begin in just a few months?
Look, we're always hopeful to get our teams on the podium. That has never been a vision that has ever left our minds. At last week's camp, Giles obviously had an opportunity to assess his squad, and in the next day or so, some announcements will be made. So that's part of the normal process. We also have the Women's World Cup, and there'll be another camp before they leave. And between World Cup and Commonwealth Games is another short series. So they're doing as much as they can in the shortest space of time. I mean, Giles wasn't appointed that long ago, so with him taking over the team, there's lots to do. And like I say, we are hopeful of a medal. Look, we've done well in the past with Commonwealth Games, so I think that if we play our cards right, there is a possibility.
Fantastic. Mrs. Shaune Baaitjies, great to talk to you this afternoon. That was SA Hockey Interim CEO just speaking to us about what's been happening in the Federation. All right, Marissa.